A metaphysical look at the Big Bang, a puzzle about reality. There are a number of reasons why the Big Bang may not have occurred. The concept implies the creation of something out of nothing. Physicist Neil Turok states that all of the inflation theories about the Big Bang are ad hoc. This story has been written under the assumption that it perhaps never happened. So the following is an attempt to show that our universe could have been created by focusing on a few basic quantum principles. A fundamental principle of quantum physics declares that matter first exists in a wave state and then collapses into a particle state upon being observed by a cognizant being. This must mean that the wave state cannot be directly sensed, but rather our consciousness somehow translates it into a particle state. In other words, this zany statement declares that it is our observation, senses, that creates this menagerie that we interpret as reality. However, from every observation we make, we seem totally unaware that this extraordinary process occurs moment by moment continuously throughout our lives. Zany or not, we are talking about quantum principles that are fully acceptable in the field of physics. When we use instruments such as microscopes, telescopes, radar, heat sensors, etc., to enhance our observations into this state of reality, we seem to have a conscious experience that somehow enables us to explore what we observe. We do this regardless of the means of how these observations are made. It is as though our consciousness seems to actually manifest our observations into the reality we believe in. In the beginning, there were only probabilities. The universe could only come into existence if someone observed it. It does not matter if the observer turned up several billion years later. The universe exists because we are aware of it. Astrophysicist Lord Martin Rees. Most physicists concentrate on physical properties as their primary interest and are reluctant to consider any relationship that consciousness may have in the process. This reluctance is usually based on a positivist viewpoint that sticks to the discipline of the physical laws that are accepted and not to the philosophical aspects of metaphysics. In fact, a slip into philosophical reasoning has brought strong criticism to one of the most prestigious physicists of our time, when Dr. John Wheeler proposed his participative anthropic principle. Where does this lead us? If a cognizant being is necessary to actualize what we call reality, then it seems logical that if the universe started as nothing, then how is it possible for a physical state of the universe to evolve before cognizant beings arrived? In order to address this conundrum, we need to consider the two basic natures of existence. The first, a priori, refers to something that exists in the nature of an idea, having a thought-like existence, e.g. mathematics and scenarios. The second is the a posteriori, which refers to matters of fact states or fact-like concepts, e.g. physical objects and living beings. These two natures are often termed as spiritual versus material. Since the beginning of the universe must have been from nothing, then there is no option other than to assume that the beginning was thought-like. John Wheeler had a doctoral student named Hugh Everett, who later authored the many worlds theory. Everett wrote that the only thing that could exist in the very beginning of the universe was the universal wave function. This, having a wave-like nature, is a thought-like term that would include all possible mathematical principles from which a universe could be created. His reasoning was based on the notions that reality initially exists in a wave state and concluded that the universal wave function would represent this beginning, which is defined as the totality of all there is. Hugh Everett then digressed off to describe his famous many worlds theory, which is beyond the scope of this discussion. Since his universal wave theory seems to be the most logical approach to understanding this mysterious beginning, we will use it as a premise for this story. The term universe is used today in physics to describe this unique existence of all there is. However, in this discussion, the term probability scenario is more a descriptive term that focuses on the mystery of this universe and not of the speculative existences of other universes. It does not eliminate the possibility, but merely removes them into a more speculative arena. In this article, probability scenarios refer to an infinite collection of possible histories, which through logical and mathematical means follow all possible scientific concepts that can exist. In this story, out of an infinite number, there is only one unique scenario that contains the exact physical constants necessary for our particular universe. Our universe, consequently, complies with this scenario, thus conforming to the weak anthropic principle WAP, as defined by Brandon Carter. The puzzle. Our existence is seen today as a fact-like universe occupied by cognizant living beings functioning in a three-dimensional arena. How on earth, literally, did it convert from a thought-like beginning to this fact-like reality? It is difficult to imagine that the beginning universe existed in a dimensionless, timeless setting, but that basically describes the nature of the universal wave function. Try to imagine a concept of this probability scenario of our universe. Each portion of it would seem to imply a progression of time which sequentially painted an incredibly detailed history of every possible action up until the appearance of a cognizant being. This scenario would adhere completely with all mathematically scientific principles that incorporate logically ordered processes. It would exist similar to a digital recording or a book that contains an incredible story that, until a cognizant being appears, cannot be read, heard, or seen. Then what happened? It was stated before that this thought-like scenario existed up until the moment a cognizant being appears. Within this thought-like history is a parallel history of a fact-like existence. This is the purpose of this scenario, to include a fact-like scenario within the thought-like process, thus enabling a transition from the thought-like to a fact-like reality that rigorously follows the laws of physics. To help you identify with this fact-like process, it begins with the first living cognizant being. To understand your relationship with this being, imagine that you will eventually exist in place of this being. This scenario begins with the first living cognizant being. Think of what you experienced during a lucid dream while sleeping or in a drug state. In a lucid dream, the experience is so vividly real to you that your emotions of fear and joy consume your total awareness. You laugh and cry or feel ecstatic joy, and in some instances, assume you feel pain. Afterward, the dream disappears into a thought-like memory where lasting effects of fear, joy, and wonderment can sometimes linger. The only difference between the dream experience and that of the fact-like scenario is that in the dream you had an identity to wake up to. In this scenario, the only thing to wake up to would be a spaceless and timeless thought-like concept where there is no awakening process. Consequently, you will now be totally immersed within this new fact-like reality. This fact-like scenario unfolds something like this. Imagine a view of a highly active watery environment that is loaded with organic molecules amino acids and elements reacting together, forming organic compounds. Within this random activity, the chance synthesizing of the RNA-DNA molecule emerges, enabling the process of reproduction to occur. For these new cells, in their intimate mutual contact, enable a sense of touch to take place. This sparks the emergence of cognizance, the first tinge of consciousness, and the first instance for the flow of time to begin. This is where self-awareness takes over. The process of self-awareness is a type of measurement, and that is exactly what is meant when the sense of touch occurs within the intimate contact of these first cells. The sensation of touch also establishes the first instance of communication. Miraculously, the activity of these primitive senses translates this thought-like status into a fact-like function, where the first instance of an independent deductive process begins. Even though this is the first moment of a physical expression, it only includes a world involving a few cells. But as additional senses evolve, the reproductive process expands and gradually the complex knowledge of their surroundings becomes apparent. The alpha point has now been set where the meticulous detail of the scenario awakens to be discovered as it is sensed into this new physical reality. The inevitability and purpose of the scenario is now fulfilled. The quantum choice has been made, a dead or alive cat or option to turn to the right or left. The random choice has been taken. We are reminded by T.H. Huxley's statement, "Man discovers that he is nothing else than evolution becoming conscious of itself." This is where the genius of Charles Darwin in 1859 took over when he wrote his magnificent On the Origin of the Species. During this beginning, the universe consisted of that which has been sensed. But as the process of evolution proceeds, the senses of sight, sound, smell, and taste illuminate the essence and value of this function of recognition as it unfolds into this menagerie of the living world. What is truly fascinating is that the dead planet in this scenario for the first time wakes up when a few living cells located in a single minuscule spot become the catalyst for spreading a mass cognitive awareness over its entire surface. Replication, mutation, and adaptive radiation evolve into a plethora of single and multicellular bacteria, inundating the waters and lands of this planet from cellular moles and algae into plants within a few billion years. Along with this, photosynthetic reactions enable the generation of oxygen, which slowly expands for another billion or so years, enabling a ripe environment for the emergence of the animal kingdom. Some of the evolutionary stages were accompanied by a mass extinction. All in all, there were about 5 of them. It was as though Mother Nature decided to try again when each direction seemed to head the wrong way. The final stage yielded the Homo species with the right mix, featuring abilities to symbolize, to make communicative utterances, to move efficiently on the ground, and gain dexterity with hands and fingers. Within each of these stages, the cognizance of developing beings created new realities which multiplied as each second passed into the future. Historians tell the rest. Scientific progress seemed to stem from the Greek, Chinese, and Egyptian cultures. From Pythagoras to Newton, Faraday, Maxwell, Schrödinger, Einstein, Planck, Bohr, Dirac, Feynman, von Neumann, to Wheeler, Hawking, Tegmark, Wilczek, and thousands of PhD physicists, mathematicians, and technologists who lead the way in explaining our universe as part of our true reality. Their observations, theories, and measurements have continuously opened new vistas and have immeasurably solved many of the mysteries of our scenario. We look forward to future wonders that we can only dream of and yet be shocked with amazement at what is unveiled. The purpose of this tale has now been told. We've gone from a fact-like process embedded in a thought-like scenario that, when released, flowed into a cognizant movement that quickly blossomed into the living world we are familiar with. We who are in it are privy to it. Those on the outside are not. Addendum. This story does not imply that the Big Bang did not occur, and perhaps someday that story will be supported by proof. More power to those who manage to accomplish such a task. Particle physics has proven that the universe contains a plethora of quantum vacuum fluctuations, each of which exists in a time period that is less than what is called Planck time, and consequently disappear before they become real. But measurements have been made that prove there is a lasting effect that demonstrates their presence, called a Casimir effect. And occasionally one of these virtual particles escapes to become real. Real meaning fact-type real. As to whether vacuum fluctuations are directly related to the transition from thought-like to fact-like, such a possibility would have to wait until a mathematical analysis could determine the possibility. These fluctuations of virtual particles continuously occur as though there is a driving urge within this scenario to grasp some instance of recognition that would ping a note that a remarkable story is anxiously waiting to be expressed.